The spiritual path is often idealized as a journey of peace, enlightenment, and transcendence. However, Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, invites us to look beyond appearances and face a less comfortable truth. The spiritual journey is also a profound encounter with our shadow, the dark and unknown aspects of ourselves. In this video, we will explore the dark truth no one tells you about the spiritual path through Jung's perspective, uncovering why this process can be as challenging as it is transformative. Get ready for a reflection that will lead you to look within yourself and question everything you thought you knew about your spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening has been largely romanticized, portrayed in popular culture as a sublime moment of enlightenment and peace. However, Carl Jung argues that genuine awakening is a deeply disruptive experience, an existential crisis that turns everything we thought we knew about ourselves and the world upside down. It is the moment when the illusions built by the ego begin to crumble, revealing a void that often causes fear and confusion. This crisis can be triggered by external events such as the loss of a loved one, failure in a relationship, or a professional crisis. But it can also arise spontaneously, taking shape in dreams or a persistent feeling that something essential is missing in life. Jung described this stage as the call of the soul, a moment when the unconscious begins to demand recognition. The problem, according to Jung, is that most people are unprepared to face this rupture. Instead of exploring the source of their discomfort, they turn to distractions, consumerism, superficial relationships, or even spiritual practices that seek to elevate the spirit while ignoring the roots of suffering. This approach, though understandable, only postpones the inevitable. Eventually, the unconscious finds ways to manifest itself, whether through disturbing dreams, inexplicable physical symptoms, or a deep sense of alienation. During this crisis, dreams play a crucial role. Jung discovered that dreams are not mere random fantasies, but messages from the unconscious trying to guide the dreamer toward greater self-understanding. For example, someone who dreams of a dark forest may be facing a call to explore their deepest fears. Ignoring these dreams is like ignoring a map that points to the exit of a labyrinth. Another essential aspect of spiritual awakening is the conflict between the ego and the unconscious. The ego, accustomed to being in control, resists giving space to the unknown. This resistance can manifest as anxiety, depression, or even cynicism toward the spiritual process. Jung emphasized that this internal struggle is not a sign of failure, but an inevitable part of the journey toward individuation. In practice, spiritual awakening requires courage and a deep commitment to self-knowledge. This doesn't necessarily mean abandoning everything known and embarking on a physical journey, though some choose that as part of their process. It rather involves an inner journey confronting the hardest questions. Who am I really? What do I value most in life? Am I willing to let go of the masks I have worn to fit into a world that no longer resonates with me? Awakening also involves learning to trust the unknown. Many people feel the need to find immediate answers, but Jung believed that true spiritual growth occurs when we learn to live with the questions. This approach is not easy, but it allows the unconscious to reveal itself naturally, without forcing interpretations or premature solutions. Ultimately, spiritual awakening, though uncomfortable, is an opportunity for rebirth. It is the first step toward a more authentic and meaningful life, but only if we are willing to face the darkness that accompanies it. The crisis of the soul is not an obstacle on the spiritual path, but the path itself, and as Jung taught, embracing this process is essential to discovering our purpose and connecting with the wholeness of our psyche. The shadow, according to Carl Jung, is one of the most intriguing and complex facets of our psyche. It represents everything we have repressed, ignored, or rejected because it doesn't fit with the image we wish to project to the world. This aspect of ourselves is not inherently bad. In fact, it contains both darkness and unrealized potential. However, because it is uncomfortable to confront, the shadow often remains hidden, exerting an invisible but powerful influence on our actions, decisions, and relationships. One of the most fascinating features of the shadow is its tendency to project onto others. When we are unwilling to recognize certain aspects of ourselves, we tend to see them reflected in those around us. For example, someone who represses their own aggression might constantly feel surrounded by combative people, This phenomenon not only distorts our perceptions, but also perpetuates cycles of conflict and alienation. Working with the shadow is essential for spiritual and psychological development. But how do we begin this process? First, we need to identify our projections. This requires honestly observing our intense emotional reactions toward others. What qualities or behaviors irritate us deeply? What do we excessively admire? These clues help us discover what we have relegated to the shadow. Once the shadow is identified, it must be integrated, not eliminated. This means accepting that the qualities we have rejected are also a part of us. For example, someone who has always avoided confrontation may discover that their repressed aggression, when channeled healthily, can become a source of courage and assertiveness. The process of integrating the shadow is not only personal, but also collective. In society, the shadow manifests in prejudice, discrimination, and cultural conflicts. By working with our own shadow, we contribute to healing these divisions, as a person who has integrated their darkness is less likely to project it onto others. The shadow also has a creative component. Many of our most innovative ideas and our deepest passions originate in this hidden part of the psyche. For example, artists, writers, and musicians often channel elements of their shadow in their work, producing creations that resonate deeply with the universal human experience. Jung believed that by integrating our shadow, we not only become more authentic, but also more whole. Spiritually, the shadow can act as a teacher. By confronting our fears, insecurities, and repressed desires, we learn valuable lessons about ourselves and our connection to the world. This process not only frees us from the chains of self-deception, but it also allows us to access a deeper level of awareness and understanding. In conclusion, the shadow is not an enemy to be defeated, but an ally waiting to be recognized. Although the process of working with the shadow can be challenging, the rewards are immense. Greater clarity, healthier relationships, and a deeper connection with our essence. As Jung said, what we do not face in ourselves, we will meet as fate. The integration of the shadow is, therefore, not just a psychological task, but an act of spiritual liberation. For Carl Jung, the path to spiritual fulfillment does not lie in pursuing external ideals, but in a deeply personal process known as individuation. This central concept in his psychological theory refers to the internal journey toward integrating all parts of oneself: the conscious, the unconscious, the shadow, and the archetypes. It is a unique process for each person, and its goal is not perfection, but authenticity. The problem with the spiritual ideal is that instead of guiding us toward a connection with our true self, it can distance us from it. Many people fall into the trap of seeking an image of perfection based on cultural, religious, or even personal expectations. These aspirations are often dictated by the ego, which is drawn to external validation and recognition. However, according to Jung, true spiritual transformation does not occur through the fulfillment of ideals, but through the reconciliation with our fragmented and forgotten parts. Individuation begins with a deep questioning. At this stage, the individual starts to realize that the identities and roles they have assumed do not represent their authentic essence. This questioning can arise from traumatic events, revelatory dreams, or a persistent feeling of dissatisfaction. As the process progresses, the person faces internal challenges that require courage and honesty to overcome. The first step toward individuation is the recognition of the shadow. As we saw in the previous section, integrating this part of our psyche frees us from the projections that distort our perception of the world and ourselves. But individuation goes beyond the shadow. It also involves connecting with the self, an archetype that represents our wholeness and the core of our being. This archetype is not a goal to be reached, but a force that guides us toward a more balanced and meaningful life. A key aspect of individuation is the relationship with the archetypes of the collective unconscious. These universal patterns, such as the hero, the wise one, or the mother, influence our lives in subtle yet powerful ways. By recognizing and working with these archetypes, we can better understand our motivations, fears, and desires. For example, the archetype of the hero can inspire us to face challenges with courage, while the archetype of the mother can help us cultivate compassion and care for ourselves and others. It is important to highlight that individuation is not a linear process. It often involves setbacks, moments of doubt, and even periods of stagnation. These challenges are an integral part of the process because they force us to confront aspects of our psyche that we have ignored or avoided. Jung described individuation as an ascending spiral where each cycle leads us to a deeper level of self-knowledge and understanding. Another essential component of individuation is the balance between opposites. Our psyche is full of dualities, light and darkness, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. Individuation does not seek to eliminate these polarities, but to integrate them into a harmonious unity. For example, Jung believed that we all have masculine, animus, and feminine, anima aspects in our psyche, and that recognizing and integrating these energies is crucial for our personal development. The process of individuation also impacts our relationships. As we become more authentic, our interactions with others become more genuine and meaningful. We stop seeking validation from others that we can only find within ourselves, and this allows us to build connections based on mutual respect and understanding. Finally, individuation has a spiritual component. Jung saw this process as a path toward transcendence, not in the sense of escaping the material world, but in finding meaning in our daily experiences. By integrating all parts of our psyche, we connect with a deeper sense of purpose and with the mystery of existence. Individuation is neither easy nor quick, but it is essential for living an authentic life. As Jung said, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain." This journey, though challenging, leads us to discover who we truly are, freeing us from the limitations of the ego and connecting us with the wholeness of our psyche. The spiritual ego is one of the most insidious traps on the path to enlightenment. It occurs when the ego, instead of lessening its control over our psyche, appropriates the spiritual process to reinforce its own importance. This can manifest in various ways, such as feeling superior to others because of our spiritual practices, seeking recognition for our spiritual achievements, or using spirituality as a way to avoid confronting our deepest insecurities. Jung warned that the spiritual ego not only halts personal growth, but also distorts the very purpose of spirituality. Instead of seeking connection with our true self or with something greater than ourselves, the spiritual ego leads us to construct an idealized identity designed to impress others. This phenomenon can be particularly common in spiritual communities, where the desire to belong may lead people to adopt behaviors and beliefs that do not reflect their inner truth. To avoid falling into this trap, it is crucial to develop a practice of honest self-observation. This involves regularly examining our motivations and being willing to question our own assumptions. For example, if we feel inclined to share our spiritual experiences publicly, we should ask ourselves whether we do so because we feel it may inspire others or because we are seeking validation. Another antidote to the spiritual ego is the commitment to humility. Jung believed that humility is not thinking less of oneself, but thinking less about oneself. Instead of seeking recognition or approval, we should focus our attention on the internal process and how we can serve others from an authentic place. The spiritual ego can also be unmasked through shadow work. As we have explored in previous sections, the shadow contains aspects of ourselves that we would rather ignore. By integrating our shadow, we diminish the need to construct an idealized image as we learn to accept and embrace our humanity in its entirety. It is important to remember that the spiritual ego is not a mistake or a failure, but a stage on the path. It is an opportunity to deepen our practice and to remind ourselves that spirituality is not about reaching a perfect state, but about living in alignment with our inner truth. In conclusion, the spiritual ego is an obstacle that we all face at some point on our journey. But by confronting it with honesty and humility, we can transform it into a valuable lesson that brings us closer to our essence. As Jung said, the way up is the way down. The collective unconscious is one of Carl Jung's most revolutionary concepts, and at the same time, one of the least understood. It refers to a deep dimension of our psyche that does not belong exclusively to the individual, but to all of humanity. According to Jung, this shared unconscious contains patterns, images, and symbols that transcend time and cultures, which he called archetypes. These archetypes are innate structures that shape our perception of reality and guide our experiences in the world. Unlike the personal unconscious, which is made up of unique experiences and repressed memories, The collective unconscious encompasses universal themes such as life, death, love, heroism, and conflict. These ideas are encoded in the myths, religions, and stories that humanity has told for millennia. For example, the myth of the hero who faces obstacles and returns transformed is an archetype present in cultures around the world, from the Greek tales of Heracles to modern superhero stories. The impact of the collective unconscious on our spiritual journey is profound. Often when we begin a process of introspection, we encounter images and symbols that we cannot easily explain. They may arise in dreams, meditations, or even in seemingly inexplicable synchronicities. Jung argued that these phenomena are not mere coincidences, but manifestations of archetypes attempting to guide us toward a greater understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. A practical example of how the collective unconscious influences our life is the way we face existential crises. When we feel lost, it is common to turn to myths or spiritual stories to find meaning. These stories activate archetypes within our psyche, providing a framework to interpret our experiences. For instance, someone going through a period of grief may resonate deeply with the archetype of resurrection, represented in stories such as Christ's resurrection, or the life-death cycle of Osiris in Egyptian mythology. However, working with the collective unconscious is not always easy. When exploring this dimension, we may encounter images that challenge us or are disturbing. Jung warned that this confrontation could be both an opportunity for growth and a risk of confusion. For this reason, he recommended approaching these contents with respect and patience, ideally with the support of a spiritual or therapeutic practice that allows for constructive integration of these experiences. One of the most interesting points about the collective unconscious is that, although it is universal, it expresses itself in unique ways in each individual. This means that while we share the same basic archetypes, the specific ways in which these archetypes emerge in our lives depend on our personal and cultural circumstances. For example, the archetype of the wise one may manifest as a spiritual teacher in one tradition, while in another, it may appear as an ancestor or spirit guide. In practical terms, the collective unconscious reminds us that we are not alone on our spiritual journey. The struggles and challenges we face have been faced by countless people before us. Archetypes and myths not only provide a framework for understanding our experiences, but also connect us to a broader tradition of spiritual seeking. This connection can be a source of strength and comfort, especially in moments of doubt or isolation. Jung believed that the collective unconscious also plays a crucial role in the evolution of humanity. By working with archetypes and integrating their lessons into our lives, we not only advance in our personal development, but also contribute to the growth of collective consciousness. This process, which Jung saw as a step toward collective individuation, involves recognizing our actions and taking responsibility for our impact on the world. In conclusion, the collective unconscious is not only a fundamental part of our psyche, but also a guide on our spiritual journey. By exploring and working with its contents, we can access profound wisdom that transcends individual boundaries. This wisdom not only illuminates our personal path, but also connects us to the shared history of humanity, reminding us that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Dreams have fascinated humanity since time immemorial, and for Carl Jung, they are much more than mere reflections of our daily experiences. According to his theory, dreams are windows to the unconscious, a way in which our psyche attempts to communicate with us. Often this communication does not occur in a logical language, but in symbols and narratives that, when properly interpreted, can reveal deep truths about our spiritual life. Jung saw dreams as direct messages from both the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. While some dreams reflect repressed desires or current anxieties, others contain archetypal images that connect the dreamer to universal themes. For example, dreaming of a mountain may symbolize the challenge of achieving a lofty goal, while a river could represent the constant flow of life and transformation. Interpreting dreams is not a simple task. Jung discouraged the use of dream dictionaries that assign fixed meanings to symbols, as he believed that each symbol should be understood in the unique context of the dreamer. Instead, he suggested exploring the dreamer's personal associations with the elements in the dream. For instance, a dog in a dream may symbolize loyalty to one person, but fear to another, depending on their personal experiences. Dreams are also especially useful in times of spiritual crisis, when we face important decisions or feel that we have lost our way. Dreams can offer guidance and clarity. Jung recounted numerous cases in which dreams helped his patients overcome emotional blocks and find meaning in their lives. In one such case, a patient who felt trapped in a purposeless job dreamt that they were in a desert searching for water. This symbol led them to reflect on their deeper needs and take steps to change their life. In addition to offering personal guidance, dreams can connect the dreamer with the collective unconscious. For example, dreams that contain archetypal figures such as the hero, the wise one, or the great mother, not only reflect personal themes but also universal truths about the human experience. These dreams can be profoundly transformative, as they remind us of our connection to something greater than ourselves. On the spiritual path, dreams can act as initiations, marking important stages in our development. Jung observed that many people dream of symbols of death and rebirth during times of transition, such as the end of a relationship or the beginning of a new project. These symbols should not be interpreted literally, but as indications that something in our psyche is changing, allowing a new part of ourselves to emerge. In practical terms, Jung recommended keeping a dream journal to record and reflect on these experiences. This habit not only helps to develop a greater understanding of dreams, but also strengthens our connection with the unconscious. By taking the messages of our dreams seriously, we show respect for our inner life and create space for the unconscious to express itself. In summary, dreams are a powerful tool for spiritual growth. They connect us with our unconscious, offer guidance in times of uncertainty, and link us to the universal archetypes that shape our experience. By learning to listen to and work with dreams, we can access an inexhaustible source of wisdom that guides us toward a fuller and more meaningful life. Carl Jung revolutionized psychology by identifying archetypes as universal patterns that structure our psyche and shape our experience. The archetypes present in the collective unconscious are symbolic forces that manifest through dreams, myths, religions, and cultural behaviors. Among the most recognized are the hero, the wise one, the shadow, and the anima animus. Although they are invisible, their influence guides our decisions, relationships, and the way we interpret the world. The archetype is not simply an abstract idea, but a dynamic energy that can either inspire or trap us, depending on how we face it. For example, the hero drives us to seek challenges and overcome obstacles, while the shadow forces us to confront our darker aspects. These patterns are not meant to be controlled or eliminated, but understood and balanced. One fascinating aspect of archetypes is how they emerge during moments of transition or crisis. When a person faces a significant change in life, it is common for them to experience dreams or fantasies filled with archetypal symbolism. For instance, imagine someone repeatedly dreaming of an elderly wise man in a forest. This represents the archetype of the wise one, likely guiding the dreamer to make decisions from a place of greater wisdom. On the other hand, dreaming of a dark, threatening figure could be a manifestation of the shadow, inviting the person to recognize repressed aspects of their personality. Jung emphasized that archetypes are not morally good or bad. They are neutral forces that take on a positive or negative character, depending on how we interact with them. The archetype of the shadow, for example, may seem terrifying, but it can also be a source of power and authenticity if integrated correctly. Similarly, the hero, who symbolizes bravery and purpose, can become arrogance or self-sabotage if overemphasized. In the spiritual realm, archetypes act as mediators between the human and the transcendent. Many religious traditions are deeply influenced by archetypal figures, such as the savior in Christianity, the bodhisattva in Buddhism, or the trickster in Native American mythologies. These figures not only represent divine ideals, but also reflect our own inner capabilities. By connecting with a spiritual archetype, we are not worshipping something external but recognizing and activating dormant qualities within ourselves. A powerful example of archetypes in action is the hero's journey, which appears in cultures worldwide, from the Greek epics like that of Ulysses to modern films like Star Wars. This universal pattern resonates deeply because it reflects the inner journey we all face on the path of life. The hero leaves their comfort zone, faces difficult trials, defeats an enemy that is often a part of themselves, and returns transformed. This journey is not just a narrative, but a guide for navigating our own internal transformations. However, working with archetypes is not without risks. As powerful forces, they can dominate us if we are not conscious of their influence. For example, someone who overly identifies with the archetype of the savior might end up sacrificing themselves excessively for others, while someone trapped in the archetype of the king may become authoritarian and egocentric. For this reason, Jung stressed the importance of self-awareness and balance in integrating archetypes in a healthy way. Jung proposed several practices for working with archetypes. The first is paying attention to dreams, as archetypes often express themselves through dream images. Another is the use of active imagination, a method where the individual consciously interacts with the images from the unconscious to understand their message. Finally, introspection and analysis are essential to identify when an archetype is influencing our decisions and how we can balance its impact. From a collective perspective, archetypes also play a crucial role in the evolution of societies. Jung believed that myths and archetypal symbols help cultures adapt to changes and find meaning in times of uncertainty. For example, during periods of war or crisis, the myths of the hero can inspire courage and resilience, while myths of rebirth and transformation can offer hope after destruction. Ultimately, archetypes connect us to something greater than ourselves. They remind us that we are not isolated in our struggles and aspirations, but are part of a universal tapestry of human experiences. By working with archetypes, we not only deepen our understanding of ourselves, but also participate in the broader story of humanity. Synchronicity, one of Carl Jung's most captivating concepts, redefines our understanding of reality by suggesting that certain seemingly unrelated events are connected by deep meaning. Jung described synchronicity as meaningful coincidences that have no direct causal relationship, but resonate with the individual's inner experience. It is a phenomenon that breaks with conventional rules of cause and effect, inviting us to consider that the universe may be filled with hidden messages and patterns. The most famous example of synchronicity in Jung's work occurred during a session with a patient. The woman had recounted a dream in which a golden scarab appeared as the central symbol. At that very moment, a golden-green scarab flew into the window of the consultation room. This event had no causal connection to the dream, but the psychological impact on the patient was immense. It was a transformative moment that broke her resistance to the analytical process. Jung believed that synchronicity occurs most frequently during moments of transition or crisis, such as births, deaths, career changes, or deep therapeutic processes. During these periods, the unconscious seems to be more active, seeking ways to communicate its message through the external environment. These events, although often dismissed as coincidences, can offer powerful guidance for those willing to listen to them. A fascinating aspect of synchronicity is how it reveals the interconnectedness between the inner and outer worlds. According to Jung, the psyche is not isolated from the universe, but is part of a larger system in which everything is connected. This principle is reflected in philosophical and spiritual traditions worldwide, from Taoism to quantum physics, which explore how consciousness influences reality. To recognize and work with synchronicity, it is important to develop sensitivity to the patterns in our lives. This doesn't mean seeking meaning in every trivial event, but rather paying attention to moments that resonate emotionally or seem to point to something significant. Keeping a journal of synchronicity experiences can be helpful to identify these patterns and reflect on their meaning. Synchronicity can also act as a catalyst for spirituality, as it challenges our mechanistic view of the world and invites us to consider the possibility of a greater purpose. These events remind us that we are not alone and in some way are part of a larger framework that transcends our understanding. In summary, synchronicity is not just a psychological curiosity, but an invitation to live with greater awareness and openness. It reminds us that the universe can be both a mirror and a teacher, reflecting our questions and offering answers in unexpected forms. By embracing this concept, we expand our perception and connect with the mystery underlying all things. On the spiritual path, not everything is light and revelation. In fact, one of the deepest and most transformative aspects is the experience of the dark night of the soul. This term, rooted in the mystical writings of St. John of the Cross, was reinterpreted by Carl Jung as an inevitable stage in the process of individuation. During this phase, the individual confronts their deepest despair, a sense of absolute emptiness and a loss of purpose. Though distressing, the dark night is essential for spiritual growth and the integration of the authentic self. The dark night of the soul can arise at different points in life, often as a response to existential crises or significant losses. It can be triggered by the death of a loved one, an emotional collapse, or even the feeling that old spiritual beliefs no longer offer comfort. Jung observed that, in many cases, these experiences result from a conflict between the conscious and the unconscious. While the ego struggles to maintain control, the unconscious demands to be recognized, bringing with it uncomfortable truths and repressed realities. During this stage, the individual may feel completely disconnected from both themselves and the world around them. Spiritual practices that once provided meaning may seem empty, and the future can appear bleak and uncertain. However, Jung emphasized that this state of darkness is not a mistake or deviation from the spiritual path, but an integral part of the transformation process. It is in this emptiness that the true search for the self begins. One of the most unsettling features of the dark night of the soul is the emergence of intense and seemingly uncontrollable emotions such as sadness, fear, and anger. These emotions, though painful, are messages from the unconscious, attempting to reveal aspects of the psyche that have been ignored or repressed. For example, someone consumed by sadness may be confronting unresolved grief, while fear may point to a lack of trust in the process of life. In this sense, the dark night of the soul is also an invitation to embrace vulnerability. Jung believed that true spiritual growth occurs when we allow ourselves to fully feel our emotions without judging or trying to repress them. This approach not only alleviates suffering, but also helps us discover internal strengths we didn't know we had. The role of dreams during this stage is crucial. Jung emphasized that dreams can act as guides during times of crisis, providing clues about what the unconscious is trying to communicate. For example, someone dreaming of being lost in a labyrinth may be facing confusion in their life, while a dream of rebirth or transformation may indicate that a new phase is beginning to emerge. These dreams should not be taken literally, but rather as symbols reflecting the dreamer's internal state and their potential for growth. Although the dark night of the soul is a deeply personal experience, it also has a collective component. Jung observed that during times of social or cultural crisis, many people experience a shared sense of loss and disconnection. This suggests that the dark night is not only an individual phenomenon, but also a process that humanity undergoes as a whole. In this context, the integration of darkness not only benefits the individual, but also contributes to the collective well-being. Overcoming the dark night of the soul does not mean solving all problems or achieving spiritual perfection. Rather, it is about accepting uncertainty and learning to live with the paradoxes of life. This acceptance allows a new clarity to emerge, not as a return to old beliefs, but as a deeper connection with the inner self and the mystery of existence. Jung compared this transformation to the myth of rebirth, a recurring theme in many spiritual and mythological traditions. Just like the phoenix rising from its ashes, the individual who passes through the dark night emerges transformed, with a greater understanding of themselves and the purpose of their life. This process does not eliminate suffering, but redefines it as a tool for growth and wisdom. In conclusion, the dark night of the soul is not a punishment or a failure, but an opportunity to delve deeper into our essence and discover who we truly are. Although difficult, it is an essential part of the spiritual journey, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, there is potential for light and transformation. As Jung said, the darkness is not the end, but the beginning of a new day. Spiritual rebirth, in Carl Jung's view, is the culmination of a long and deeply transformative process. It is not a miraculous or instantaneous event, but a state that is reached after facing and overcoming the trials of individuation, the integration of the shadow, and the dark night of the soul. This rebirth does not mean escaping the difficulties of life, but learning to live with greater authenticity, purpose, and connection to the whole. Jung described spiritual rebirth as a process of integration, in which the fragmented parts of the psyche unite into a harmonious whole. In this state, The ego ceases to be the center of our identity, allowing the self, the deepest and most authentic core of our psyche, to take command. This change does not eliminate the ego, but rather places it in the service of a higher purpose, aligned with our essence and our place in the universe. A central aspect of spiritual rebirth is the ability to derive meaning from life's experiences, including those that once seemed painful or meaningless. Carl Jung believed that when suffering is approached with awareness, it holds the potential to be transformed into wisdom. This shift in perspective liberates us from the grip of past wounds and equips us to face the future with confidence and resilience. Spiritual rebirth also reshapes how we relate to others and to the world. By integrating our shadows and healing old wounds, we cultivate greater compassion, both for ourselves and for others. This transformation not only enhances personal relationships, but also empowers us to contribute positively to the well-being of our communities and the world at large. Symbolically, spiritual rebirth is represented across cultures by images of profound transformation: the lotus emerging from the mud, the chrysalis transforming into a butterfly, or the phoenix rising from the ashes. These symbols remind us of the inherent power of renewal and inspire us to persist on our own journeys, showing us that even in darkness, the seeds of light are waiting to bloom. Archetypes also play a pivotal role in spiritual rebirth. The Wise One archetype, for example, offers insight and guidance, helping us grasp deeper truths about life. The hero archetype encourages courage and determination, urging us to confront challenges with strength. These universal patterns connect our individual experiences to the shared narrative of humanity, reminding us that our journey is part of something far greater. At its core, spiritual rebirth connects us to a transcendent dimension of existence. This connection is not confined to any particular religion or belief system, but is a sense of unity with the universe and a reality greater than ourselves. Jung saw this state as the ultimate goal of the spiritual journey, a return to the center of being, where all opposites dissolve, leaving only a sense of wholeness. In the end, spiritual rebirth is not a final destination but the beginning of a renewed way of living. It is a state of harmony, purpose, and connection that enables us to approach life's challenges with a fresh perspective. Though the journey may be arduous, the rewards, authenticity, deeper relationships, and a profound connection to the mystery of existence make it undeniably worthwhile.